Driving me nuts.
You think it's just going to happen overnight one day, or does there need to be a little like what do we need? A little players only meeting, players only practice,
or
like or you just need to get your ass kicked and like really have a wake up game. Like what in your time playing in the W or even college, what really turns the tide to you and like and getting teed up?
I like that.
Oh, I got a stat for you. Oh, do we say Soph's already 15th in All-Star voting?
Oh, let's go. I voted this morning because the Fever tweeted the meme also, and it was like All-Star voting again. Fever with a classy post, using the meme and linking All-Star voting. So I hopped on.
Yeah, but I think like AB, Caitlin, and Kels are all up there. That's great. That's great. They should be. And we're not even like playing good basketball yet, which blows me.
Right.
Something is brewing inside the Indiana Fever locker room, and one of their most respected veterans just made sure everyone knows it. Sophie Cunningham sat down for a podcast interview recently, and what came out of her mouth wasn't the usual coach speak we're used to hearing from WNBA players. When asked what it actually takes to turn a rough patch around, she didn't talk about tightening up the defense or running more reps in practice. She talked about needing a players-only meeting. She talked about team bonding. She talked about needing to get away from basketball entirely, just to reset mentally. That's not normal deflection. That's a veteran telling you in plain language that something deeper is wrong. And here's what makes this so jarring. Sophie isn't some fringe role player venting about playing time. Since joining the Fever, she's been putting up the highest three-point percentage of anyone in the entire WNBA. Not top 5, not top 10. First, she's legitimately one of the most efficient shooters in the league right now, drawing comparisons to Steph Curry from national podcast hosts. And yet, when All-Star voting numbers came out, she was sitting all the way down at 15th. Think about that disconnect for a second. The best three-point shooter in the league on merit, barely cracking the top 15 in fan voting. Meanwhile, 3 of her own teammates, Aliyah Boston, Caitlin Clark, and Kelsey Mitchell, are all sitting near the top of the leaderboard. So you've got a roster absolutely loaded with star power and Chinese letter recognition, and still, by Sophie's own admission, they are not playing good basketball yet. Her words, not mine, and she says it blows her mind. That's the part that should really catch your attention. When a 10-year vet looks at a roster this talented and says she's confused why it isn't clicking, that tells you the problem isn't schematic. It's not something a coach fixes by drawing up a new set on the whiteboard. This is something underneath the surface. If you're following every twist in this Fever season as closely as I am, make sure you're subscribed to WNBA updates. I break down every storyline like this one the moment it happens, so hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss what comes next. Now let's get into what Sophie didn't say, because in situations like this, silence tells you just as much as the words themselves. Notice she never once brought up the coaching staff. She wasn't talking about X's and O's, offensive sets, or defensive rotations. Every single thing she pointed to was about the human element, the relationships between teammates, the need for closed-door meetings, the need for players-only practices. That's a very specific signal. It suggests whatever's wrong here isn't a strategy problem, it's a chemistry problem. And that puts her directly at odds with what head coach Stephanie White has been telling the media. White has repeatedly said the locker room is fine, that there's no drama, no dysfunction to speak of. But here's one of her own veteran players, going on record publicly, essentially begging for an intervention. Those two versions of reality don't line up. Either White genuinely isn't seeing what Sophie's seeing inside that locker room, or she's trying to shield a fragile situation from outside scrutiny. Neither one is a great look for the organization. Now, plenty of fans online have jumped straight to blaming a specific player, pointing to Kelsey Mitchell's relatively low assist numbers as evidence of a ball-dominant approach that isn't feeding Caitlin Clark enough touches. And look, the numbers back up part of that concern. But before anyone starts assigning blame to one individual, it's worth considering a bigger picture explanation. This roster is stacked with multiple players who are used to being the primary option. When you put that many high-usage, ball-dominant scorers on one floor, you're not necessarily dealing with one toxic personality. You're dealing with an unresolved hierarchy. Nobody's figured out yet who defers to whom in crunch time, and that kind of unanswered question can quietly poison a locker room just as badly as an actual personal conflict. Sophie also brought up something that seems small on the surface, but might be the most revealing detail of all. She mentioned that practices have felt long and draining lately, and that sometimes the team just needs to get away from the sport entirely. Long practices aren't unusual in professional sports, but when a player feels the need to specifically call that out in a public interview, it usually means something else is going on underneath, tension that makes every rep feel heavier than it should. She also brought up a story from her time in Phoenix, describing a team tradition where the group would go all out with a big dinner and stay out late together before a big game, win or lose, purely for the bonding. And then she said, point blank, that she's willing to try anything at this point with the Fever. That's the phrase that should stop you in your tracks. This is a proven veteran who's played through championship runs and multiple organizational cultures, and she's telling you she's out of conventional answers. Compare that to how the league's most successful teams talk about themselves. The Las Vegas Aces constantly talk about their chemistry and connection off the court. The New York Liberty rebuilt their entire culture around player relationships and full roster buy-in. Winning in this league isn't just about raw talent, it's about genuine connection. And right now, despite having 3 All-Star caliber players, the Fever look disconnected. There's also a fascinating wrinkle buried in all of this. Fans online spent weeks speculating about tension between Caitlin Clark and Raven Johnson. But on the court, those two have actually looked great together. So that theory is basically dead, which narrows the list of possibilities considerably, and none of the remaining options are particularly comfortable for Indiana. So where does all of this leave the Fever? They've got an elite, top-tier shooter openly calling for an intervention, a head coach publicly insisting everything is fine, 3 All-Star caliber players who aren't yet playing cohesive basketball together, and now a grueling road trip on the horizon that Sophie herself doesn't sound fully confident will fix anything. That road trip is going to be the real test. Either the group finds its footing away from Indianapolis, or they come back and the cracks are even more obvious than before. And with Caitlin Clark's rookie window still wide open, the Fever don't have unlimited time to figure this out. The pressure to solve this puzzle and solve it fast has never been higher. That's where things stand right now with the Fever, but this story is far from over. Subscribe to WNBA updates so you catch every update as this situation develops. Drop your own theory on what's really going on in that locker room down in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.